Hello students, I am Dr. L. K. Das, Assistant Professor of Sociology at the Department of HSS IIT Roorkee, and I welcome you to another lecture of this NPTEL course Power and Politics in Contemporary India, a Sociological View. In this lecture today, we will be discussing about one aspect of Michel Foucault's work, and this is in continuation with our engagement with power, politics, statecraft, which is not only at the level of state, but also at the level of discourse, at the level of culture, at the level of politics, as well as at the level of everyday life. Now, what could encapsulate most of these ideas except for Michel Foucault's idea of governmentality? Michel Foucault was a French philosopher, historian, sociologist, and professor of the history of ideas. He developed this idea, this concept of governmentality in the late 1970s. So, when he's working on governmentality, he's also looking at not only governmentality, but he's also looking at how this idea emerged in the first place itself. And like any other good academician, he is putting it within a certain debate, a debate to understand state-society relationship. He is not talking about revolutions like Ramsey or Marx. He is not talking about bureaucracy like Weber. He is not talking about how the regeneration or reproduction of elites is happening in society. He is not talking about the fields of society. He is not talking about how the state can be managed in order for a passive revolution or active revolution to happen. Rather, he is talking about discipline, sovereignty, as well as modern power that is used to shape the behavior of population. Now keep in mind the words I have just used. I am speaking about sovereignty, about discipline, modern power, and shaping behavior indirectly of the population. Now this is significant for Foucault because Foucault is not using the concept of citizen. Foucault is using the concept of population. Now, is a population citizen? Is a population denizen? Is a population something else? So, when he is talking about population, Foucault is looking at sovereignty, discipline, and behavior. This population is followed up, is created through what he calls as conduct of conduct, or governmentality can also be described as the conduct of conduct, which means that through a process in which an area is created, and this area and the people who are inhabiting this area, or the individuals who are inhabiting this area, they are following compliance. They are following a system in which they feel, the individuals themselves feel that they have to act in a way to gain better results for themselves. Why do you think that it is important for us to run or jog or walk every day, whether in the morning or in the evening? Do you think 50 years back our grandparents, or when our parents were in the younger times, they used to jog in the morning, or they used to be part of any of those kind of actions. Why is it that over the past 20-30 years, more and more people are getting into marathons, are getting into the Fitbit kind of apps, or they want to have 10,000 steps per day? According to Foucault, this is about you watching your own steps. This is not the state. This is not the ruling elite. This is not reproduction of any elite at any level. This is you who is directly in contact with the idea that you are responsible for your own betterment. Nobody else is. You have work. It is your responsibility to reach there on time. You have an exam. It is your, as an individual, whose responsibility is to reach your examination hall on time, come there well prepared, as well as do well in the exam. If you are not doing so, that means it is your responsibility, not anybody else's. It is not the responsibility of society. Now, for Foucault, this is a very, very interesting aspect that is happening, because this is happening with each one of us. This is not about one individual, this is not about two individuals, this is not about state coming in with its police, with its military and telling us that you have to participate in this marathon. No. We are participating in certain marathons because we believe that by participating in these marathons, we can achieve something, even if it is a medal, even if it is a certificate or just a t-shirt. That way, governmentality is at the highest level of conduct. But like all his other works, Foucault is tracing the history of this concept, or rather than calling it a concept, he would call it a discourse. A discourse primarily because it is an ensemble. It is a collection of practices, calculations and devices that together regulate life, that together create a debate about something. People come and speak about it both in favor as well as against it. Some people practice it, and then whatever is done, the road follows. So governmentality is also a discourse because it is not just one institution. Just think about the example that I mentioned about running marathons. As I said, nobody is forcing you to run marathons. If you watch news, if you watch the public space, you see that a lot of people speak what is great about running a marathon, 42 kilometers. First, it is very good for your body because you are not just running 142 kilometers, but you are practicing for it for almost 1 year. That means that 42 kilometers is the culmination of a long process or a long journey. There are other sides of it. The other side of it is that no, you should not be running so much. We humans have attained a level that if we can use a vehicle to move from point A to point B, then why we should be walking, why we should be running so much? And particularly if you are running for such a long distance, and the history tells us that the first person who ran marathon in Greece died after he delivered the message. So there is no point in doing it. But there is a third location. The third location is that you have devices which control these two sides of the debate. Control in the sense that they are sitting behind the back. If you are debating on Facebook, you are debating on Twitter, you are debating somewhere else. It is reading what you are doing. And by reading what you are doing, it is again using that information, that data to sell you advertisements. If you're speaking in favor of it, maybe it is selling you some kind of shoes. Look at the advertisements and the kind of people who come and advertise for them. So this is the way through which control mechanism works. It is not in front of us like it used to be a few centuries back. Something he calls sovereignty or the rule of the king. It is also not about disciplining or institutional control. Rather, it is about you and me feeling part of this, the economy, of this society and this state. I run a marathon because I'm doing it for my son. I'm running a marathon because I am doing it for the cancer awareness. I'm doing a marathon in sari because I feel that somebody can also do that. And through that process, I'm bringing a cultural aspect to my beliefs. But Foucault would argue that whatever you are doing, you are just following the trap that has been laid out for you. And that is how governmentality functions. So historically, Foucault divides the entire history of governmentality in stages. The first stage is sovereignty, second stage is discipline, and third stage is governmentality. Sovereignty means that a ruler has a power over its territory and its subjects. Territory and subjects, if you remember, we had discussed with Weber, right? That a sovereign state, a modern sovereign state, has absolute legitimate control over its territory and legitimate authority over monopoly use of violence, correct? So you have territory, you have subjects, and this sovereign, who also happens to be a king, has the authority over your life and death, which is quite straightforward. You might have heard about those urban legends in which Akbar was very infamous for meting out punishment whom he did not like. If he did not like somebody, then he always had an elephant at standby mode, and this individual would be crushed to death. That was also called as medieval punishment. So, and at some other time, if the person or the guilty here is a little nicer, or for some other reason, this emperor or the sovereign feels that he should not be he should be pardoned, then his life was spared. Everything was in monochrome. Either you are dead or your life is spared. Nothing in between. Second comes that of a discipline, in which we have prisons, schools, armies, and docile and productive bodies were created through institutions. Remember when you went to school, your mothers or anybody for that matter would first comb your hair, to bathe you well, comb your hair and send you to the school with your best dress. You go there, and anytime you do not follow the norms or the rules that are prescribed and written down by the schools, you are punished. You are supposed to behave in a particular way. And the best example of this is the military, or here we can also say army, because in military everything is written down. You have, if you are male, you have to shave your face every single day. You have to wear a particular kind of uniform. You have to have a particular kind of the hairstyle. You greet and meet each other in through a particular hierarchy. So everything is disciplined. So is the case of prisons. Your time, when you can go out, when you can come inside, what time you get your food, what time you get up, what time you sleep, everything is regulated. So a docile, productive body is created here. And this is where schools matter. This is where the other kind of places matter. It's also the same goes with hospitals, same goes with asylums. And as a matter of fact, in other works of the Foucault, he has given examples about prisons, about asylum, mental asylums, and other kind of institutions when he is speaking about how these docile bodies are created. Because your body needs to be productive for the economy to function. If the school is not making you disciplined, if your college is not making you disciplined, that means you cannot be a productive worker for the capitalist economy. School teaches you to be punctual, always come to class on time, always pay attention to your teachers, always do your homework, always excel in your exams. That simply means that you have a body which is good enough to follow orders. And if it is not good enough to follow orders, that means it has to be sent to a prison, or it has to be sent to a mental asylum, or thrown out of the city premises itself. So these two stages, sovereignty and discipline, they mark two different stages of development of society. The third aspect is governmentality, as we have been discussing. The target is now not an individual. So the target is now not any random individual. The target is now the population itself. As a citizen, you have certain rights. As a citizen, you have certain duties. But with the process of governmentality, all of them are going to be colluded together in the way you are managing your own body, your life, so that you can become a productive labor. Through self-regulation, you are diabetic because probably you have been consuming too much of sugar. So consume less. Your body will collapse if you take too much of the banned substances. It's up to you. If you're not following it, things are not going to go well for you. So this comes, according to Foucault, particularly in the Christian Western context, what he calls as the Christian Pastorate, which he is comparing with that of a Greek polis. A Greek polis was about community, in which it was the survival of the entire population, whereas the Christian pastorate is about the shepherd flock model. A shepherd knows every sheep that it has or that he has, and every sheep knows his shepherd. A shepherd will always take care of his sheep whatever the conditions, and a sheep would always believe his shepherd whatever the conditions. This is a mutually inclusive process, and this is something that Foucault is using. He is comparing between the two and saying that governmentality is a process of governance in which the process or discourse itself is attentive of every single individual and their inner lives. Starting from school, and even before that, starting from home, you move on to college, move on to your job, move on to your married life, At every stage, things are going to function in a particular way. And these are the seeds that are being planted to make you into an ideal population, ideal subject. So many of you, many of us during a school time used to have a subject called moral education. Go back to those books or booklets that you might have studied. Go back to the ideas that you had studied. How to become a moral or how to become a model student. You just look around your house. Do you have posters which shows what a child must do every day once he gets up or she gets up in the morning? Check out that poster. What is it that it is telling you? Probably it looks like some age-old knowledge. But if you follow Foucault's idea of governmentality within a political sociology framework of power of state-society relationship, you get to know that even if it looks archaic, but it is telling you to do something. Even if it is speaking about morality, it is speaking about morality from a very, very modern context. And this modern context is what leads Foucault to become one of the most prominent social scientists who happened in the 20th century. Again, from this Christian Pastorate, which happened in the antiquity in a theological framework, he is taking us to early modern governmentality of the 16th, 17th century, in which he argues that now the sovereign, because of whatever conditions that were happening, taking place uh, in Europe, the sovereign or the emperor cannot justify his own governance only through divine authority, the divine authority to rule. And it is also the example of Magna Carta, through which the emperor's power was curtailed by the English Parliament. So you have to do something as an emperor or as a sovereign authority to remain the sovereign authority. So following Machiavelli, Foucault argues that two appendages or apparatuses emerged during this period in the 16th and 17th century. It is for the first time that the duality of military diplomatic apparatus for outside and police apparatus for inside was created. Otherwise, before this period, you only had military to take care of internal problems as well as external issues. So police, even if they are armed, they are not military. So the police apparatuses have more in common with a civil aspect of life than that of military, because unlike the military, police personnel do not stay in cantonments or they do not stay in barracks. Rather, they have their housings, or many a times if they are not getting a house, they rent their place among the civilians and live there. So maybe the 9 to 5 they are well armed, and after the 5 o'clock in the evening they become civilians. But their work is very significant, because now they are regulating the internal life in terms of economy, population, circulation of goods. Economy control, it has to be policed. Have you ever come across this term, policed? Your food habits need to be policed. Your working culture need to be policed. Your life need to be policed. That means a certain form of control needs to be implemented in society in order to make police as part of your daily life. If you don't feel the good about your neighbor, immediately you call up the police, because you believe that the police is able to control the entire aspect that is happening there. Somebody is partying too much around you, you call the police. You do not call military there, right? You do not call the military, because military is for external purposes now. So are the diplomats, they are for the external purposes. The second aspect he speaks about is the 18th and 19th century, which he terms as liberal governmentality. Liberal governmentality is based on liberalism and market. And market in this period is treated as natural, which must function smoothly. So the role of the government is to take care of the market and anything and everything that is around it. Otherwise, things are going to be a little problematic. That is the reason why freedom is celebrated, but not all freedoms. Only the freedoms that are compatible to the market are celebrated. Your freedom of speech is celebrated, but that does not mean that you are going to abuse your boss. That is not celebrated, or that is not accepted. Your freedom to sleep at any time or get up at any time is celebrated, but not between 9 to 5. You cannot sleep during the work hours. Your freedom to move out of a place is celebrated, but not if you are not working for the government, for the country, or for the economy, or for the market economy. So everything had to be conducive to the liberal idea of market and private property. And liberal governmentality secured against dangers of disease, sexual deviance, poverty, so on and so forth. So this is how during the 18th and 19th century, according to Foucault, governmentality or its predecessors function. But in the current period, you have neoliberal governmentality, which basically means that now it is all about a free market, and anybody and everybody can participate in this free market. This is not just about one individual or two individuals, it's about everybody. Everybody is equal here. You are the homo economicus. That means anybody can become an entrepreneur. Think about YouTube. How many of you either want to or have posted something on YouTube, thinking that probably you can also become a social media influencer? This could be anything. This could be about you posting the funny video, or you are creating a funny video, or you like cooking, you have done something and uploaded there, thinking that okay, if some food video has crossed 1 million views and that person has made some money, I am also going to do that. But unlike liberal governmentality, in which the role was more of a facilitator rather than an active participant in the market, neoliberal governmentality requires active government intervention. Without that, free market cannot function. You require land. In the free market, particularly in a country like India, it is very difficult because you require maybe 1,000 acres of land. So the state will take care of your land, it will acquire land and give it to you, and it is going to use any means to do that. But the land that is there outside of this zone that has been acquired, these areas, now they all think that every piece of land is going to be sold for crores and everybody is going to become a crorepati. So this is how neoliberal governmentality works. It makes sense to everybody in a way that as an individual, if I have got certain resources, I can use it for my own development, for my own betterment. Now this is a very interesting notion as well as a discourse. Interesting notion and discourse primarily because not everybody can become a billionaire, not everybody can become a millionaire, because if everybody becomes a millionaire or a billionaire, then the ones who are trillionaires are going to be rich and everybody else is going to be considered as poor. So this is all relative in nature, and the moment we understand this relativity or this relational aspect of governmentality, we would understand the power and politics that is there through which governments create systems in place to control the population again and again and again, and making it, in the language of Gramsci, a common sense. Now becoming an entrepreneur is a common sense. It is not, earlier times it was a businessman, now you are an entrepreneur. Even a ready wala is an entrepreneur. Even a pani puri wala is an entrepreneur. Anybody who has posted the funny video on YouTube is an entrepreneur. So this is how we internalize these changes, these shifts, without recognizing, as I have been saying, that what is happening between the lines, what is happening below the surface, and why is it happening, who is benefiting out of it. So political sociology argues that we have to be extremely careful, we have to be conscious of how something is working and why something is working and whose interests it is serving. The moment we realize or read between the lines, we'll get to know whose interests it is serving. So what are the contemporary applications of governmentality and power? Is that now this concept has been used and abused by anybody and everybody. Used because there is no issue that is not being analyzed through the idea of governmentality. Whether it is what is happening at the level, at the stage of border wars, what is happening at the level of fitness apps, what is happening at the level of your daily routine, everything is getting part of it, getting analyzed through this concept. Whether it is about individuals becoming responsible customers or markets regulating emissions, or you and me being asked to reduce our consumption of plastic or single-use plastic, rather than shutting down the factories themselves. So this is about how we are governing, how we are looking at our own bodies, looking at our own conscience, and looking at the broader common sense that is prevailing in our society. So in conclusion, governmentality is about the rationality plus technique plus subjectivity, and there is rarely it is really coercive. It is not monolithic and it is not totalizing. It is open to critique, but the critique is also part of the same discourse. Can we move out of governmentality? We don't know, because that is something that even Foucault did not anticipate. He spoke about critique of it, but then he said that discourse is both about positive and negative aspects. When both positive and negative aspects are spoken about, that is when discourse becomes hegemonic. Of course, he did not use the word hegemonic, that is when it becomes a certain way of getting part of common sense. So these are some of the questions that you can check for yourself. How does conduct of conduct differ from coercion? Why is governmentality more pervasive than sovereignty or discipline today? Can you think of contemporary examples of neoliberal governmentality in your own life? And you can read some of these works, which are very fascinating. The way he is looking at the history of the Western Europe in terms of birth of prison or in terms of sexuality, and how knowledge and discourse are produced. This is where he speaks about knowledge as power. And Tanya Morelli's work and May's work, they are applying this idea of governmentality by engaging in a research method called ethnography and looking at both how governmentality is used and how people challenge this governmentality. Tanya Morelli is speaking about how governmentality, the way it is on pen and paper, is not implementable on the ground. So you can go read about it, and we'll meet in the next class. Thank you.